Today's New York Post cover shows the utter devastation of that children's hospital with this headline: atrocity. Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis, retired U.S. Army senior fellow with defense priorities, also a veteran of 4 combat deployments, including Operation Desert Storm, Iraq in 2009, and Afghanistan twice. Colonel, thank you for being in focus today.
Thank you for having me.
Everyday Americans, we are now in the 15th day of this. We are seeing things that only, well, colonels and generals and those in the field in combat have ever seen. What do you make of what Putin is doing now? It's war, yes, but it seems so far afield from anything human.
Yeah, it's so far afield from anything that we've seen in most of our lifetimes. Although going back to Desert Storm, when I was in the biggest tank battle up to that point since World War II, in the Battle of Seventh Reaching, I saw extraordinary levels of destruction, and I saw civilians that had been, knocked out of their homes in Kuwait. It was just horrifying, and that was maybe a fraction of what we're seeing now, because it's not just Mariupol, but it's also Kharkiv and several of these other cities, and probably more to come. And it is just heartbreaking to see a lot of that, and it's just, this is total war. And one of the reasons why we should, avoid it at all costs and do everything we can to prevent it. But unfortunately, all of that failed, and now we are where we are, and we have to do the best we can to contain this so that these kinds of images don't expand beyond Ukraine's border into Warsaw or to Paris or Berlin or, God forbid, Washington if it expands into nuclear strikes. And that is a very real possibility we have to contemplate.
Yeah, I'm hearing that more and more now, that word nuclear, and the possibility, because the person is running all of these make-believe propaganda, and we'll get to the biochem weapons and all of that in just a moment. But because of all of that rhetoric now from Putin, much of what we're seeing now began as rhetoric. I want to get to this. It's a plea to the West that we have heard so many times from Ukrainian President Zelensky. Let's watch.
We are speaking about closing the sky. If you are united against the Nazism and this terror, you have to close. You have to phone us to our people who lost their children and say, sorry, we didn't do it yesterday, 1 week ago.
It is fascinating. He speaks many languages, President Zelensky. He's speaking in English there to Sky News, and he knows we are paying attention as Americans.
Yeah, and, if I was in his shoes, I would be verbatim saying the same things. I would be doing everything I could to get anybody else to come to help us. But we have to be really strong on this and understand that to do what he's asking brings us into war. And now then these scenes of devastation could fall on us and all of our NATO allies, and we absolutely can't permit that to happen. We can help him with ways of arms and other kinds of material support, but we just can't enter this conflict, because then it'll expand it and the suffering will be orders of magnitude higher.
What do we need to do immediately next, though? Because there are some things generals are telling me, and Colonel Davis, you have told me previously, there are things, covert ops, there are things that we can do, even with those MiGs in Poland. So what's next steps look like?
Yeah, we'd like to say that we can do this. This next step is gonna stop Putin. But I'm just telling you, Harris, the harsh reality is that probably only negotiations are going to stop him at this point. He's weathered all of the sanctions. He's calculated that in, and he is definitely committed to this. As you see with Mariupol, that shows you that he is utterly committed, and he's not going to stop until he gets his tactical objectives. And what we have to do is just, again, prevent it from going beyond the borders, and understand, other than escalating to larger war, there's probably nothing we can do to stop it. And I know that no one likes to hear that, but that's the harsh reality.
Well, we need the facts real quickly. Worries about a Russian attack using bio or chemical weapons. The White House with a stark warning. Press Secretary Jen Psaki tweeted this: we took note of Russia's false claims about alleged U.S. biological weapons labs and chemical weapons development in Ukraine. It's the kind of disinformation operation we've seen repeatedly from the Russians over the years, which have been debunked. And an example of the types of false pretexts we have been warning the Russians would invent. It sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but from everything I'm reading, the falsehood of this would be to make it look like the U.S. and Ukraine were in cahoots in a biolab, which would not be true. But for that to be the precursor or the reason why Putin would go in and use chem weapons or maybe take this north to nukes. Your take on it?
Yeah, and without question, that's everything that we know is completely debunks this as being untrue. I mean, we've been there. I mean, these first agreements that we had go back to 1991 because of the chem bioweapon program that the USSR had. We've been working at least since 2005 formally to help demilitarize a lot of these things. So we're actually helping to prevent the very thing he's claiming that we're doing. So there's no truth to that. And it is something that we need to be very clear about it, and broadcasting this out to the world to show that this is something that has no foundation is a very important thing for us to do, and I'm fully supportive of that.
Wow. He is such a KGB agent. He may have a dictatorship, a president before his, but he is what he is. He's a killer spy.
Yeah,
Colonel
he is.
Davis, thank you very much for being with me today.